Today we have a special episode, number 80. Before we introduce our exceptional guest, I would like to announce that the main part of the conversations will be hosted by Kasia and Ola. And as always, we would like to invite you to listen to our traditional intro. Hello, my name is Maciej and I would like to welcome you to the charming Green Dragon Inn. Normally, in our podcast, I prepare and tell you about interesting stories from Professor Tolkien's texts, as we analyze them together with my co-host.
Hello, I'm Kasia, and in addition to discussing parts of the books together, I support Maciek linguistically, especially when we discuss Tolkien's original writing, or talk in English like today. I also take care of the technical side of our podcast.
Hello, my name is Ola and I manage the social media of our podcast. Today I will be joining Maciek and Kasia as a co-host and welcome our very special guest arriving from the far corner of Middle-earth.
The last member of our team is Nikodem, who is responsible for all audio editing. The Green Dragon is a friendly place for all travelers. Here you will be able to wander together with us through the immensely rich works of Professor John Ronald Reuel Tolkien.
Because we analyze his text a few paragraphs at a time in each episode. We delve into the history, interesting facts, and some humor. We also compare our native Polish translations of the professor works with each other or to the original text.
In our conversations, we rely heavily on already existing material, which forms a very sizable Tolkien's collection that is the base of the books on which we focus when preparing each episode. However, everything is done in a very inn-like manner, as a loose and casual conversation between us and sometimes between our special guests who regularly visit the inn.
If you want to learn more about our podcast, we encourage you to check out episode number 0 or the trailer. There we talk a bit about ourselves and above all about the very form, inspiration and goals of our podcasting.
Take a seat in our inn under the Green Dragon, prepare yourself a pint of a good drink, and we begin today's journey to Middle-earth.
Alright guys, today we are very excited because today's guest is one of the most famous illustrators of Tolkien's works. I think that each of you has had in your hands a copy of The Silmarillion or maybe Unfinished Tales with his illustrations.
I did, and I think we even have it here, we will show it in a minute.
We have a lot.
But yes, for many years he has also been a member of the Tolkien Society, one of the most prominent society gathering Tolkien scholars.
In addition, he is also a musician and a vocalist. He has released, among others, a music CD inspired by Tolkien's prose called The Hidden Door: Songs in the Key of Enchantment.
You can also find his illustrations in many editions of books from a series A Song of Fire and Ice by George R. R. Martin, including the special editions from 2015.
And on a daily basis, he lives in Ontario, which is, as he says, close to nature. Dear listeners, let's give a warm welcome to Ted Nasmith. Hello, Ted.
Hello. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. We're very happy you joined us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Yes.
for
Do you often record podcasts? Is it the medium?
Interviews?
one or two, once a couple times a year, usually, I guess.
And are you a podcast listener? Do you maybe have some favorite podcasts that you listen to?
Not terribly often. If I know about it, if it's pointed out to me, I'll usually go and try and listen to it. But I'm not normally kind of looking for them. There's just too much going on for me usually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sometimes you need this pause in consuming content, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Here at our inn, we have a long tradition of asking our first-time guests 5 simple questions to find a bit more about their connections to Tolkien's work. And I must say we are very curious about your answers. So I think we can start.
Yeah, the first question is traditionally mine, so I will ask the first. For how long have you been reading Tolkien's books?
I believe it was when I was 15 years old that I first read A Fellowship of the Ring. So it's been a lifelong journey, really.
So you started with The Lord of the Rings.
I did, yes. My sister was a reader of the book. Her boyfriend at the time in high school was part of a Tolkien fan group, and this is way before there was much, it just was a book that people knew about at the time. Very early days of the fan groups. So she thought that I'd like it, and I read it. So, and then I read The Hobbit after that.
And after your first reading, do you know already that this was your love for whole life? The story of...
It definitely captured me. I knew I was going to be drawing pictures from this book pretty quickly afterwards.
Awesome.
And it just, it hasn't let up yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I was reading your biography on your website, and I have one sentence noted about you reading the Lord of the Rings, and there you had, "There's nothing quite like finding something important you didn't know you were looking for," and I really like that.
That's a great quote.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's a good one. No, exactly. That's a very good way of putting it. And life is wonderful that way.
I think we all share this feeling here, and I'm sure that our listeners also do. That's like something. It's amazing how each of us, started our adventure with Tolkien with something else, but for all of us, it just stayed our whole life. That's amazing.
It becomes a very important thing altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and saying saying quotes. Do you have a favorite quote or like saying from Tolkien's works?
Oh dear. There are probably a few of them, and I could probably narrow it down to about 10 of them, maybe. But there is no one saying or quote that I can come up with at this point. I don't read that often the books and their prose, but when I do, for instance, when I'm preparing for a painting and want to review all the information about it, and in one of the ones that's coming up soon is Galadriel's feast in Lothlorien for the Fellowship, and the giving of gifts. And when I read Gimli's the part where she gives Gimli the 3 hairs, tears come to my eyes easily. It is so beautifully written.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful scene.
It is indeed, yeah.
And that's the new painting you are preparing?
So this is the subject of one of the new commissions I'll be doing probably in April. I would think I would be getting going on that one. But I've got a solid number of commissions right now, about 5 altogether stacked up. So I'm looking forward to getting going on all that work now.
Great. That's great news.
Yeah. Good to know.
All right. Next question then from me. Which place or maybe places in the whole Legendarium would you choose for your retirement, and why?
That one. Well, when I was reading the Book of Lost Tales and the description of the Cottage of Lost Play and the whole aesthetic about it being kind of a haven, a place of safety, a place of calm, that kind of struck me as beautiful. Ariel, the character Ariel, and his encounter with Ramil, and the storytelling and all of that stuff that goes on there. It's kind of a shame that the Silmarillion did not continue with that structure. That this was someone coming from away, lands on this strange island, hears all these strange stories of a history of elves, and then we get the story of the Silmarillion. But I do love Book of Lost Tales for that reason. It's and thank goodness we have it, because it's very different in many ways, and very rich with imagery. And for an artist like me, that's true. Wonderful stuff.
That is amazing. Yeah, I like that answer a lot.
So maybe the island of Eresia would be a good retirement place for me.
For sure, yeah.
Nice. I think that's the first time we have it mentioned. We already had like horse riding through Rohan. We had the canoeing on Anduin.
Creek Hollow, also. Shire, and Rivendell.
Yeah,
of course.
Usual. Probably not too many Mordor.
No. Interesting. I think last time someone said Ainulindale as a more metaphysical retirement to just observe this creation of the world. Just
sitting and watching.
Yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful thing for our imaginations. My goodness.
Yeah.
Kasia?
All right, then the next one. How many books written by Tolkien and about Tolkien do you have in your collection? Are you a books collector?
I do, and I don't remember reading that question actually, but I have dozens and dozens. Sometimes it's just I did the cover of a book, lent my art for the cover of an academic book, and I get sent a copy, and sometimes I read them as well, and I love some of the books that I do have and that I've read, analyzing Tolkien on the various levels there are in his work. There's so many layers, but yeah, there must be 70 books easily related to Tolkien, I would guess. It'd be good to count them all, though. It would be good.
And
that is a good collection, yeah.
And do you enjoy like having or like collecting the special editions, like the high quality ones? Or?
No, I can't afford them anyway. But it's nice to be part of doing a special edition like it was for George R.R. Martin there. And any other type of situation like that is tremendous excitement. But no, I'm not normally a collector of the books so much. It's just like I get them sent to me, whether I ask for them or not.
Yeah, we have a couple, like, not really the richest editions, but then like really nice editions. But for example, the Silmarillion. But the thing is that we are afraid to touch it, right?
Yeah. They are packed in original packs and then
not to destroy them or like make them dirty or something. So I don't know actually if that's if this is that needed or not.
Not for us.
Ola, do you have many like that?
Editions that I wouldn't touch, maybe. Well, right now, yes, because I actually do have a couple of very old editions that I used to read, but I do not read them anymore. And one of them has the autograph of John Rhys Davies. It's in my fellowship. So right now it's like my precious, and it's already falling apart a little bit. So now, yeah, it's just, it's just on the shelf.
Right. Not to be disturbed. Yes. I have a few like that too. Like there's a history of Middle Earth that I was given, somewhat as compensation for favors I'd done at HarperCollins, and that's a beautiful boxed edition with all this 12 books, all 12 volumes in a big compendium. So that one I haven't even opened really exactly. Look at them and they're just beautiful to have.
Yes, absolutely. There's something about Tolkien's books and some editions that, I don't know, they're so special.
I have a one-off too. I think they made 5 of these or something, but it's a miniaturized Lord of the Rings illustrated with my art, and it was done from Cuba, from a friend down in Cuba, and he gave it to me, gifted it to me. Has a little like bookends that come with it, and it's 3 tiny volumes. It's absolutely like 2 inches tall.
So this like really little ones. I remember
Yeah, very collectible, that one, and a rare one. So if I ever need money,
that's an investment.
Okay, Ola, next question.
Yes, the last one of our first 5 questions. So, if you could choose one character to go on a quest to Mount Doom and destroy, or at least try to destroy the One Ring, who would it be and why?
Wouldn't go any further than Sam. Clearly, he proved to be up to the job, and I was just reading about how he's one of the 2 characters in the book that has possession of the ring, but does not find it tempting. To the point, he kind of has this common sense that it's about what he doesn't know and what he does know. And what he does know is that he is an ordinary guy. He knows his place in life. He's a gardener. He doesn't particularly imagine that he's anything better than that. And when he thinks about what he might do with the ring, he just realizes it's such an absurd vision of a person who would never be qualified for such a thing, and is satisfied with that. But yeah, Samwise.
Sam is always a good choice.
Yes. It's proven. So Ted, we have one more question to this short one. When and how did you start to be an illustrator? So how that story began? It was at school. It was, and when did you realize that it's something more than just a hobby, or something more than just playing and drawing?
Right. It was an interesting situation. I did have a notable and exceptional talent for drawing right from a very early age. The story goes that in kindergarten, we were asked to draw a house in the drawing session, and it turned out that my drawing of the house was in perspective, that it was not just the front, but the side and the roof in perspective and all of this kind of thing. And so there was, the teacher noticed it and told my mother. So that was the first sign of something that was unusual when it came to art for me. And interestingly enough, I ended up in architectural rendering later on, as I did for years and years. But drawing all the time as a kid, I get all the way to grade 8 and about to go to high school, and the guidance department, they're asking the students what you're planning to do, what kind of courses you're going to select. And unless the guidance counselor had not told me that there was an art course that I could become an art student, I wouldn't have had any idea that that was a possibility in the Toronto education system. That there were 3 different high schools that offered commercial art programs, and it was multiple subjects in the commercial art field. And once I realized that that was a possibility, I immediately applied for it, and then we moved out of the region where that school was located after the first year, which would be grade 9. So because I liked it so much, I really thrived for the first time in my life, recognized for the drawing that I was good at, and now was purposefully studying rather than just being something that I did for fun, which seemed to, and so yeah, I was launched quickly into studies of art, and that was how it began for me. And I actually attended the funeral of my art teacher, my illustration teacher from back there in 1969, 70, 71, and who particularly encouraged me in my work and was excited to have me as a student. And one of the first pictures I did was a high school project that he asked me to assign to the class on the theme of travel. So I knew what kind of travel I was interested in, which would be Middle Earth travel.
Oh, right.
So I produced an illustration at that point.
And can you tell us something about your inspirations at the beginning? So about style and colors and everything?
Yeah, well, I would do things like, there's a whole sheet, I still have it somewhere, little thumbnails of characters, Shelob the spider, a dwarf here, an orc there, and then bits of landscape, mountains, Mount Doom, other things of that kind. But more and more it became like the landscape and the natural backgrounds, which I decided that I really enjoyed doing that kind of thing and wanted to get better and better at it. I wasn't so good at drawing characters and people, but I always had done that for myself before I even got to high school. So I just simply started to get better at it and study it more carefully. And of course, it helped that we had figure drawing classes, life drawing classes, and other things of that kind, and the methodology for anatomy and those kinds of skill sets. I started to get good at it. Yeah.
That's very inspirational. To find something that not only are you good at, but you also love and just pursue it, no matter what. That's amazing.
Well, I soon realized that Tolkien was not just a secondary kind of side for my personal pleasure, but a vocation, a calling, a real, mission, as it were. And I would fantasize about being the official Tolkien illustrator, but I had self-assigned that. It was nothing at all. There was no such thing. But I wanted to be someone who took it seriously, so I acted as though if I was the one to do the job or to illustrate the scene, how careful would I have to be about that in order to try to reflect the Tolkien's own intentions? And I was pretty careful, especially with that.
That's amazing.
In 1999, you were invited along with Alan Lee and John Ho to get involved in Peter Jackson's film trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, the one we all know. Could you tell us a bit more why you ultimately did not actively create concept arts for the movies? And what was there any involvement at the end from your side?
It's not quite that I resigned as much as that I never really got started. We had interviews with me on the phone, by email and other kind of means, describing what they were looking for and that they would be interested in having me part of the team at Wellington doing the special effects and drawings and backgrounds and everything.
Okay.
But because I was leaving my marriage at the time, I was partly depressed, not in a great state of mind, but, functioning. And it just was a really awkward situation to imagine flying all the way to New Zealand, which is about as far as I could imagine being from my family, rather than taking care of the transition that I was in for the sake of my kids, who we were agreed would have shared custody.
Right.
That was what was going to happen. So they would come to me and then we'd go back to their mom. And just so that they would make that transition, stay with their friends and have as little disruption as possible. It just didn't seem right for me to be going off to New Zealand. And I had preferred to work from home. I had told them that I have other clients, I have other work. I can't necessarily devote myself entirely to the film ideas. So I have turned down offers in the past as well from other good offers for employment on this, because of the overall picture didn't really work properly for me, and I was okay with making that kind of a call. And as it turned out, a few weeks later, I got an email from Sue Gibson from her London art gallery, and she sold imaginative art there, surrealism and all sorts of things, fantasy. Hadn't really known about my work until the previous summer, and said that she would get back to me about that. And she emailed offering to do a full exhibition of originals in London, which was what we went ahead with. And I wasn't there for that first exhibition, but she said she'd never seen such emotional responses from people coming in from out of town to specifically see my art. And she hadn't been much on Tolkien or knew much about Tolkien or anything, but she was now paying attention. And when we organized an even larger exhibition, she certainly extended that one longer than she had originally planned to do. And then in 2001, in September, the same month as the 9/11 attack, we had an exhibition planned and set up as well, a larger one with media invited, and we went ahead with it. And I went over to London at the time, and was very glad that I did so, because it was kind of high drama. Everyone was so kind of nervous about what might or might not happen now. It was terrible. But we focused in on the art and my work and this event, and I think it was the right decision. It was 1 week later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good that it turned out to be like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite something.
Okay, let's get back on track, I think. So, yeah.
So, where are we at?
Yeah, but that was an interesting chain of events. And
yeah.
All right, let's do a short break now, and then we will move to the main discussion. It's time for our self-advertising, because at the beginning of this season, we have launched a profile on Patronite.
This means that every one of you can financially support our activities from now on. Consider if you're willing and able to join the group of our patrons. We offer you quite a lot in return, starting with a dedicated Discord channel, additional materials, or the opportunity to join us during the recordings as a listener, and various gadgets and gifts.
So we invite you to join us on Patronite. Your support will help us not only maintain the level of the podcast, but rise it even higher. You will find links to our Patronite on our website. They will be also available on YouTube and other media.
But of course, you don't have to do anything, because the podcast will continue to appear in the same form as before, absolutely for free. After all, we are Tolkien fans and we create out of pure passion.
We invite you to our Instagram and Facebook, where we regularly upload posts extending current episodes. Meanwhile, on our website, you will find links to all episodes, along with footnotes and our library of books that we use to create the podcast.
We also encourage you to support us on all the channels where you follow us. Your likes, ratings, or reviews make us more visible. This means more Tolkien fans joining our inn.
And as a result, we have more interesting discussions, so don't hesitate to ask us questions or comment. Okay, Ted, then we briefly touched upon that before the break, but could you tell us a bit more how your adventure with illustrating Tolkien began, and what was this breakthrough moment between drawing your own visions and becoming one of the most important illustrators of Tolkien's works? Was it when you mentioned you read The Lord of the Rings when you were 15? So is it when you started drawing Tolkien?
No, simply at the point when, I was still in school, still reading the books, discovering ideas and making sketches. The only thing I wanted to do was to just create the pictures. And friends, family, others around me were excited by what I was doing. Anyone who had read the books was telling me, "Oh, you've really nailed it. You've really captured this, the feel there, and we love what you're doing here." And so I just kept doing it because it was self-rewarding, and soon began. Calendars were being sold in, I think, 73, 74, 75. The first one started appearing here in North America, and when I saw that, when I saw the possibilities, like say Tim Kirk's first calendar, I realized that yes, like even if I'm not sure whether I would ever illustrate the books or anything of that kind, I didn't imagine anything so formal at all. But I thought, well, if I'm interested in the books as far as just painting the pictures for my own interest as a professional illustrator, without seeing too many other artists doing the same thing at all, then maybe it'll get published someday. Maybe I'll be able to reach other people, and I had that ambition. And it took about 15 years till the middle of the 80s, but I just kept working on stuff, doing new pictures, kept getting new ideas. People would suggest stuff, and I, in one of the books I bought with illustrations by Joan Wyatt. It was a UK publication. It was a series of fairly amateur paintings by a gifted amateur of all the scenes in various scenes in Lord of the Rings. In the back of that book, it mentioned the Tolkien Society, and I was like, oh, okay, there's a society. I'd like to find out more about that. So I wrote to them, and I thought maybe someone in that group would be able to introduce my work to the publishers in England, and we'll see where we go from there. But it was a long time before I imagined any kind of illustrated book possibilities. That didn't factor into it. Once getting into doing calendars and doing pictures for calendars, that was all I wanted to do for a long time. And the idea of illustrating one of the books itself was just a dream or an idea, a fantasy that I never expected to necessarily achieve at all.
Oh, that's lovely. Luckily, dreams do come true.
Yeah. Luckily for us, because we have your illustrations.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally appreciate.
Okay, and there's also a very interesting story. Could you maybe tell us a bit more about when, as a teenager, you sent Tolkien photos of your illustrations in 1972? What motivated you to try? What was the response? And what are your memories from this interaction? Because that's something amazing.
Right. So here's a teenager suddenly seized with a passion for drawing this author's characters and scenes. And of course, it occurred to me, why don't I write to him? And show some photos of this stuff. And I don't remember if anyone else suggested that or not, but I took it up and assembled a few photo snapshots and sent them off to him. And, some weeks later, in comes this little blue aerogram. And his correspondence secretary had conveyed his comments in that. And I was just delighted. It was very, 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 encouraging for me to hear from him. And I didn't think all that much of it. It wasn't like I was super awestruck. I just was glad to get feedback from this man, and it was perfectly reasonable, I thought, for me to try to connect with him. What I didn't know was that he was as elderly as he is, and that he would only last another year and would die before his 90th birthday. But I was very, very glad that I had managed to do that. So the only thing I did not do was to save the letter itself. I have no idea where it ever went to, but I was a teenager.
Yeah. Who would have thought? But that's incredible. Wow.
Be careful with this one. Realizing its importance later on, like, oh no.
Especially,
no one's going to believe me.
And especially also now at the time we live in, because now if we do that by email, right? Now there is not even I wouldn't say that easier, because you don't even have the address of the author, because nobody shares that because of the privacy reasons. So you cannot really send something physical, right?
No, all you could do is, as we did then, send a letter to the publisher and hope that they will forward it.
Okay. Yes, right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the fascinating story.
Apparently, people did get the phone number and phone him in the middle of the night, though. That's one of those stupid.
But that ended in middle 60s because he shut down this number. And but yes,
because people didn't imagine they needed privacy. Probably someone just looked it up in the phone book in Oxford or something.
And especially people abroad from the other side of the ocean, they called and didn't realize that time is changing in Europe.
But what happened to this character? Why?
Middle of the night.
Which he was happy to answer if he wasn't being bothered in the middle of the night when he needed to get his.
When he picked up the phone, it's too late. Okay.
Yes, you mentioned the Tolkien calendars, of course, and the first one in 1987. This was your debut as an illustrator. Was it this breakthrough moment? You treated as that? This first calendar?
Yeah, very much so. It was almost surreal to see that thing in the stores, because I used to go over to the mall where we lived and to the bookstore every August to look for the new Tolkien calendar. So this was kind of a magical thing for me. And now I had my own, even though, there was just 4 illustrations published along with all the ones from Lee and Howe and Roger Garland at the time. But it was introducing my art to a large audience of people. And there wasn't quite the competition in calendars as we see nowadays. You can't even really find the Tolkien calendar in most bookstores these days. It's only an online situation. And even then, I've heard people say they can't find it when it's being published. So these are difficulties. But at that point in time, it was like, wow, oh my gosh, I've gotten this.
And how long did the preparation to the publication took you? It was...
Right, so I already had several pieces of art ready to go, and about a year prior I had gone to Ottawa at the invitation of George Allen and Unwin, his publishers in London, to meet with their representative who was going to be there. And it was the World Fantasy Convention, I believe, at the time in Ottawa. So that was a chance to show my original art, and that was the first time I had been able to do that with anybody important. So that was breakthrough time for me. And months later, the invitation to submit art for this calendar came along. And let's see, I went on a trip to England myself, just exploratory for my own purposes, and looking for artists that I admired in various museums and places. So I had left the original art with them in London at that time. This was how it had to be done. You had to simply give them the originals. There wasn't any sort of, files or even transparencies available. So come a long way.
And it was your choice to choose these 4 pictures that you had?
I think they suggested those ones in that case. They were choosing them from like probably 10 or 12 paintings. And yeah.
Okay.
But afterwards, I started to be the one deciding on the art, and they were just very good about that.
Okay, that was what our next question was about, actually, because later on you returned to the calendar pages many times. So we were curious if the illustrations were created directly for them, or did you just generally propose artwork that already existed?
Let me see, 1990 was the first full calendar, and there was an opportunity to publish a lot of those other works that I had brought to the interview at the time. But I knew that I wanted to do new ones as well, so I don't remember exactly, but I do remember thinking, I want to have something from Silmarillion, something from Unfinished Tales, something from The Hobbit, and then most of them being Lord of the Rings illustrations. And I was given freedom to do that. There was no kind of like requirements or criteria that I had to meet at all, except just provide, say, 13 pieces of art so that there was a cover, and then the 12 months, or a 14 if there was a double-page spread, say. So I think we were doing them too. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Maciej?
So let's talk about the first illustrated Silmarillion, 1998. So it was my first Tolkien book that I bought from secondhand, actually, because it was cheaper in Poland in these days, and it was before Jackson movies. So actually, I must say that your art has more influence on my view of Middle Earth than Jackson movies, actually. So, I see Middle Earth like you show us. So, I'm very grateful for this. So, my question is, was it your choice to create illustration for this book, or you were asked for this from
the publisher?
The publisher, yes, the publisher. Right. So, how it begins?
Well, it's a good story. I will just quickly refer back to the calendar series and say that the ones that I did from 2002, 3, and 4 were important to me because I was given the job of just doing Lord of the Rings in a chronological series of illustrations. So Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, and what meant a lot was that I got to do 3 calendars in a row, just like the Hildebrands did in the 70s. And theirs sold hugely. It was one of the biggest selling calendars at the time, so it doesn't explain why they had such an enormous influence on the look of Middle-earth and art of Middle-earth. But it also galvanized me to continue to push for my own ideas. So anyway, but yeah, Silmarillion, well, I reread the book in the 90s and put a mark on every part of it where I thought, okay, there's a possible illustration here. And went through it. It was probably well over 200 subjects that I accumulated there. Did a series of small pencil thumbnails from that, working back to the beginning and going all the way through. And then from that, I did a series of color sketches, color studies, photographed them as Xerox copies so that they were uniform sizes. And there were about 70 of those ones finished by the middle of the 90s. At which point I thought, well, I'll contact HarperCollins and suggest an art book based on the Silmarillion. So you just call it, say, The First Age of Middle-earth and Artist's Odyssey or something along those lines. And I created a little spiral-bound, booklet for that. And that was what I sent over. And the response was that they had shown this to Christopher Tolkien in one of their regular meetings, and that they explained that they had been asking him about the possibility of illustrating the Silmarillion for quite a while, some years, and he had always turned them down.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently reviewing those drawings and those illustrations in the sort of fairly, rough form that they were, was enough to convince him that there was a possibility of a good illustrated edition, and he gave his blessing to it. And we had it less than a year once that decision was taken, and then I got to work. But I was the one in charge of which artwork, except he was consulting with me, and there was some criteria applied. No monsters, no stuff that would look like popular culture, Frank Frazetta or other sorts of less dignified, as he would have thought, fantasy. So his restrictions were actually fairly sensible. I felt I could still work with it within that easily enough. And it removed the decision making for some scenes, because I could only do 16 illustrations based on the binding of the book, so that they could tip in the glossy paper in those in between bundles. Mm-hmm. And so I would look for a subject either 4 or 5 pages ahead or 4 or 5 pages behind that spot. And then there might be 3 or 4 illustration possibilities. And in 1 or 2 cases, Christopher and I discussed which one it would be. And I argued in the case of the first elves under the stars at Lake Kuivian.
Oh, that's a lovely one.
I said, he wasn't sure that he wanted to use that at all, thinking it was too ephemeral, too kind of spiritual a moment. Mm. My reply was basically that artists throughout history have represented religious subjects quite successfully in a realistic format. Yes. So I didn't think that there would be any problem understanding what this was conveying, and that it was still only a representation of what the author or what his father had written. Mm-hmm. And he agreed with me then. And I also argued that, the Silmarillion is fairly dark, fairly somber, criticized for being, a much too tragic account, epic as it is, than Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. And I wanted, as an illustrator, to bring out the fairy qualities more than you might imagine. And so if there was a scene like that at Lake Kuivianen, versus Autumno, which was the other possibility, this dark fortress, well, we want the one that's more uplifting and sublime. Yeah. And to remind people that this is an author of extraordinary imagination. Yes. And his names and his history and all of these things that he's poured into this book throughout his life need to be made as illustrations to be more appealing, to get past a bit of that prejudice that had kind of built up around it. And then it was just like heavy discipline on my part to crank out the illustrations in groups of 5 over 2 months each. I had about 8 months to do everything. The second edition that came out in 2004 with more illustrations, like 25 new illustrations, was because Christopher had asked the publishers to give me more time. They knew they wanted to bring out a special edition, a new expanded edition, but he asked them to delay it 1 year so that I could paint more scenes. And that's how we ended up with so many more paintings in it. I was so satisfied that,
Yeah, and here you mentioned also colors. This is something you wanted to ask, right?
I have a question about, because I have impression in my head that this 1998 edition illustrations were darker as in the 2004. I mean, more of them were at night or landscape where we see only mountains, so we don't see skies, we don't see sun and everything.
Was it on purpose?
Yeah, was it on purpose? So you said that Silmarillion is dark story, so I see the connection between illustrations like this, but you also said that imaginary of Tolkien is more than this, and it should show
light as well.
That is an excellent question, and I didn't consciously try to make a difference with the new pieces. I think we'd already accomplished something by creating the first illustrated edition, a very important breakthrough for fans. And I've heard so many times that artwork had made the book more accessible and digestible for folks, and that it was just a matter of expanding on that idea with the new edition. And heaven knows I could have happily done many more paintings if I had been able to. And I still, create new ones now with private commissions, for instance. And but there's long been but the full collection of, say, Tour and Tour Bar illustrations, sketches, and other things is considerable, and we only see a fraction of them in the published books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I didn't think before that because it has to also fit the text. So you need to have this like 5 pages here, 5 pages here, and then you need to find the logistic of the book.
Yes, true.
And the illustrations. Yeah, that's interesting.
Not only art, also logistic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that we eventually got to have this artwork that you mentioned about the elves awakening under the stars. Because just like you, Maciej, it was my first introduction to maybe I had seen the movies, but to the Silmarillion, was Ted's art. That was my introduction. So I still have this image in my head, the elves, beautiful blue, purple sky, the stars. So yeah, I'm so glad we got this one.
I will show you the image that I have in my, this one.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, it's
right.
beautiful, I think, and it shows everything. So we have Glaurung, we have Turin. I want to ask you, what was your idea to show exactly this scene from all the Turin Turambar story? It's a beautiful scene. We have everything. We have Glaurung, we have Turin, we have Finduilas, and Nargothrond broken.
Well, and I was glad that I was allowed to paint Glaurung the way I saw him, and not have that shut down by Christopher's Day, or because it's the dragons. There's so many different ways of doing them, and there's no really one definitive way. But it's such a central scene to his story. It's very pivotal. I mean, this is the moment when the dragon really pulls a bad one on. Making him forget that he was in love with this woman who's just been paraded past him in captivity, and he just ends up running off to on a fool's errand because of Glaurung, and it's a powerful moment, and one feels the tragedy of it. So it was important to somehow to capture that, the sack of Nargothrond.
Yeah. Do you maybe have any particular characters or scenes that are your favorite to illustrate? Are you maybe personally drawn to any characters?
In Silmarillion?
Yes.
In Silmarillion? Well, I guess I'm fairly detached, like most people. And
not us. We're not.
You love the characters, but I don't feel like it's describing anything about you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And are there maybe any characters or scenes that you have not portrayed yet, but maybe it's one of your dream projects that you want to portray them? Or not really? Again, right. From the Silmarillion.
It would be good to get the dragons and eagles, Arundel, that whole battle of the final epical, scene.
Yeah, okay.
That's one that I have had a sketch of for a long time, but I've never done a full-size piece of, and would be a lot of fun to do. But there's, a lot of possible illustrations.
That would be incredible. The battle.
Even I sometimes discover ideas that I didn't realize I had. oh, that would make a good picture, actually. And sometimes it's just like the suggestion of a thing that will get my imagination going on a thing.
Yeah, I think the Silmarillion is like a bottomless source of inspiration for sure.
It's a phenomenally rich book of ideas.
Yeah.
I've been, going into Book of Lost Tales, I think I mentioned earlier, and that's a whole other, adventure again. I had never done Tevildo till recently.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at, well, what have the other artists done with that particular character? And I was like, nope, they're not getting it at all. This is much too pretty a cat.
But
it was described as a hideous face, so I just decided, okay, well, there's something there's a little challenge for me. And, yeah.
And you said already that you have worked together with Christopher, and I have heard somewhere that Christopher was there was a rule for illustrators that they shouldn't draw characters as close as possible because it must stay to imagination of readers. It is true. It is like that. So there were scenes that shouldn't be drawn.
He, it's probably a bit of an exaggeration. He never once explicitly indicated that any character shouldn't be shown close up. I think it was known that I generally don't bother doing that either. It's that much more work. I'm not as good at characters and faces and costumes as I am at landscape and architectural detail. But, I tend to prefer the characters be a little further away, just because that's the impression I get from the text itself, that they're not seriously described. George R.R. Martin, he's much more, really gets into detail with the characters, their face, their physical characteristics and costumes, what they eat, other things of that kind. So it's a very different kind of narration there. With Tolkien, he lets us fill in the blanks of what the characters may or may not look like, or how they may act in a more kind of in-depth way, say. And I don't care to do them close up, even to this day. I was doing a Smaug face recently, and they had a particular style guide for it, and it just was, I'm not really feeling it here. I can produce the art, and it serves the purpose it's meant for, but this one is just like doing it for the other person rather than myself. Just creating art that adheres to a proper standard, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, you wanted to ask about the architectural background, right, Ola?
Right, yes, I can ask that. So you already mentioned that you have educational background in architectural illustration, and when we look at your Middle-earth illustrations, we see a great attention to detail whenever you draw buildings. So we were wondering if this way of painting is carefully thought out and somewhat designed in your head, or does it come naturally to you and is more intuitive?
Probably a bit of both. I would think that the architecture itself was a happy accident. I didn't really plan on going into that as a career, and it's funny how that happens. I didn't plan on being a Tolkien artist either, but I am. and these things turn out to be just like where you are meant to be. The attention to architectural details is definitely because I'm a detail-oriented person. The high realism I apply to my architectural renderings also comes into the Tolkien art, and to me, it's just that much more fun inventing architecture than it is to just recreate something that another person designed.
Right.
So there's that part of it. And also I have opinions on what Middle-earth architecture ought to be for me. And that is that it maybe looks a little bit like something we've seen in history, but there's a little bit difference there too. And something a little more exotic and unusual, say. And I always like that idea that Middle-earth would be somewhat familiar, but also somewhat strange.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that it kind of is appealing, I think. It's not super familiar.
Okay, that's
and
interesting.
We know that Tolkien didn't know where he was going with this journey to Mordor until he was at least halfway there. He was still just kind of mapping it out as he went along, and it was a very interesting creative process.
Yeah, okay. And do you maybe have a preference when it comes to drawing buildings from Middle-earth or nature, or like scenery, or does it not really matter?
Landscape.
It's easier to do the scenery. Definitely easier to do the scenery.
Oh, okay.
It flows very naturally from my hand, and the architecture, you slow down and let's put this together and figure out what kind of variations and ideas. And of course, I'll have fun doing that too. But the easier option is definitely landscapes.
Okay. Lovely. And one more question when it comes to architectural design, because whenever we were going through your website, we noticed one illustration called Proposed Airport Terminal Poland in Warsaw, and it surprised us a little bit. So we were wondering, how did that happen? Like, have you ever visited Poland, or was it just...
Right. Unfortunately, no, and I would love to do so, so like...
lovely, yeah. Maybe you should come for one of the conventions, to meet Polish fans.
Let me know. I'll be available. I'll happily come and visit.
All right.
I do understand there's so much to see there in Poland.
Oh, yeah.
But... that story is that I was working for Scott and Associates, and they were an architectural firm. They would get into architectural competitions for airport designs, and this was a common thing for airport designs. And one of them was Warsaw. So, and I think that was a night scene, if I remember. It was an unusual case for me of doing a night scene with an aerial view of the airport, but I'm very proud of that one. And I don't know if that expansion ever did, in fact, get built or not. Those are the sorts of things that kind of come later on. But I'm there to just present the artwork, and this would be the sort of primary tool for selling the project, I guess. And then they would have all the architectural design drawings along with it.
So it was more like to show the vision. Wood. And I have also the off-topic question here, because I'm interested. Because I work in a video game industry, and did you, to the architectural rendering, do you also use the game engines maybe once, or you tried to play around with?
Oh, right. Well, no.
Okay.
Kind of old school. And it's like I've got less and less awareness of that than most people anywhere. 20 years younger be like, oh yeah, no problem. So it just sort of doesn't enter into it. I'm sort of stuck to my old methods, I guess, mostly.
But no, I mean, that's also good. So I was rather curious if you tried, but that's the bit different use case.
The closest I've gotten to games is being a designer of art for them. That has happened.
Yeah.
Yes, so we also have artists in the team, so that also draw by hand still. So that's not everything is computer based. All right, and let's stay on the subject of illustrations, but move away from Tolkien from a moment, because we already covered the architectural design, but also you mentioned the George Martin's books. So could you tell us more what led your illustrations appearing in his books, A Song of Ice and Fire, and was it your initiative to take the world of Game of Thrones, or did the publisher ask you?
Oh, once more, a happy accident. George R. R. Martin himself, I think it was him, wrote to me, emailed me, I guess, and proposed that I might be one of the illustrators for the special editions that were coming out from Misha Merlin at that point. And I was interested, but I went to my friend Martin Spring, a fellow illustrator, and said, so who's this George R. R. Martin guy? And should I take this seriously? And he's like, oh my God, if he came to you I'd say that's pretty good. And we really want to talk to him about whatever it is he's proposing. And so that was the beginning of a very good association between us. And I said I haven't read the books, and he sent me the 3 first volumes of Storm of Swords, Game of Feast for Crows, and Game of Thrones. And I read them and I was addicted to them quickly. So I decided that I did actually like his writing a lot, and would enjoy illustrating the books. And it's been a real labor of love for me to take on the special edition in particular. But before we got going on that, there was also the coffee table book, The World of Ice and Fire, and the publishers of that, Random House, wanted me to illustrate castles, as did George. So I took on a series of, 14 or 15 castle illustrations, and couldn't be in 2 places at one time. So we let go of the idea of the illustrated edition, which would have been maybe one of the later books in the series. But as it turned out, the publishers, Misha Merlin, went under. They went bankrupt and had only published, I think, 3 volumes, or I think it was that many, of his books in the series, Ice and Fire. So that's when Subterranean Press came into it, and the decision was taken to start over and do Game of Thrones, Feast for Crows, Storm of Swords, and the 4th and 5th books as a consistent series of special editions, boxed editions, signed, etc. And that's why I ended up illustrating A Game of Thrones, the first book. It had already come out in a special edition, and fans know this, by a different illustrator. And so, it was a fantastic gig to get into that. And I realized that, there's not a lot of landscape in George R. R. Martin's descriptions. It's more set pieces with characters speaking to each other, a lot of dialogue. But there are a lot of very interesting scenes, certainly. And I practiced my character design a lot with that project. And I was very happy with how I came up with the various the voices of the chapter characters, so that each chapter is whether Tyrion or Sansa or Arya or Eddard or whoever, and those little sort of chapter reports, which was one of the more satisfying parts of it, because I could read that, unlike the video series on TV, the ages of Arya, Sansa, and Daenerys were younger, 2 years younger than they're portrayed in TV and the film. So I could draw them as that age, right? And Arya looks like a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, and Sansa looks like a 9 or 10-year-old. And Daenerys is a 13-year-old.
And if you exchange emails with George R. Martin, do you have any information about 6 and 7 both?
I know exactly. Like, even I don't dare pester him about that. Just doesn't want to hear about it. And I think that there is a case for, like, what, man, don't do this to us. Don't leave us with a video series ending when you had all this other stuff that potentially could have come out in the novels. And even if it's different, we want to know what you had in mind and how you resolve this thing. And don't tell us you don't know how to resolve the goddamn thing.
Exactly,
I read the whole series twice. I didn't watch the TV series because I don't like series.
We didn't,
so I'm really looking forward to the 2 remaining books. I hope they will get published.
Right.
Maybe one day.
I did not watch the series, maybe part of the first season. That was about it. But my partner didn't like all this sexual violence, and I didn't blame her. Like, it's one thing in a book. It's another thing on the screen.
Yes, absolutely. And there was even more of it on the screen.
Yeah, but the thing you mentioned with the construction of the chapters, that it's about the character, it actually got me to read like through the nights, because I always wanted to know what happened to this character next. So then in the middle, I had to read all the other characters' stories. So
Skipping past the others. Right.
Yeah.
they kept you going. It was very good narrative structure.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right. We ready? Next question, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so returning to Tolkien again, there is a very rich and important branch of your work that is little known to the general public, and you're also a musician, not just illustrator. You play the bass, the guitar, you're a vocalist. You have created 2 music albums interpreting Middle-earth, one of them together with Alex Lewis. So we were wondering, could you somehow try and compare interpreting Tolkien through illustrations and then through music? Maybe, are there any feelings or different visions of the same events and scenes? How do you compare these 2 processes?
Well, music is a lot more immediate in terms of this expression of emotions. Painting, you're sort of sublimating it into that, and maybe the person who looks at it maybe experiences some emotions. But it is lovely with the medium of music to, have that to explore, because it's so different than art for drawing and painting. And there's a chance for me, this introvert, to express myself musically, and explore the joys of that. And how it can also, my sense of the music that I want to write to Tolkien is a little different than what you sometimes get from other interpreters, which is a kind of quasi-Celtic folk sound, as though it's being performed in Middle-earth. But I just thought, well, I just want to write songs that satisfy my own musical ideas, that express the feelings, but aren't, they're more modern structure and so on. And that idea. And with you referred to the second one with Alex Lewis, and that's like a huge song cycle of Baron and Luthien. The lyrics were all composed by Alex, and he had his own musical settings, but he held them back while I explored musical settings of my own. And everything is a cycle of minor keys in that one, with a certain motif that's kind of injected into each song in some places. So it's a very interesting technical exercise, and just was very easy to write, it turned out. And so it's just it's unpublishable, because the Tolkien estate will not grant licenses for musical projects. And I haven't even bothered asking them, but you'd think that after all these years with so many potential talent, that they'd ease up on that a little bit more, but we'll see, I guess. But yes, I love my whole musical side of my work, and the experiences I've had in choirs, and the camaraderie from that. Many friends that I've known and do know from, and that I still hang out with nowadays, regarding music and my involvement in that. And my brother Bruce, who's helpful on my CD particularly, because he's the kind of musical genius of the family. And he's also a music director at a church, so there are times when I'm able to be a sub-tenor, a substitute tenor, and join with that choir with him, and that is something that brings back familiarity from years and years and years ago, right from my youth.
Did you had the musical education, or was it from the family thing?
No, it was mostly self-taught. We all 3 loved when we had a guitar given to us for Christmas, and all 3 of us traded that thing and played with it, and you enjoyed it and learned on it. And then, it just went from there. Like a lot of people, it's just like, you listen to pop music, you want to sing the song or play the song, and you just work out the chords somehow, or you figure it out, and or someone teaches you this or that. So just small steps that over the years have added up to being a musician. And I did actually take CRTC, which is it's a music school in Toronto. The what do they call them? Conservatory. I took their harmony studies, and my brother guided me through those so that I can write in 4-part harmony competently, according to the methodology and rules and things like that. So I do apply that thinking and that knowledge to my songwriting as well. And therefore, I try to write things that aren't going to be something I look at later and think, oh, that's awful. Just poorly done.
Yeah, from our team, Maciej is the most, I think, musical person. Because
Nikodem.
Or Nikodem.
Let's not forget
I mean,
about Nikodem.
yeah.
We are playing also in band with Nikodem, so when we were younger.
Yeah, and Nikodem is now pursuing his passion of crafting the guitars by himself. Yeah,
cutting
exactly.
from wood and do everything from beginning to the end. So yeah,
fantastic. That's a wonderful art. Yes.
It's very difficult actually. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Next questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and could you tell us anything about your plans in the nearest future related to Tolkien's work? Maybe are you involved in any further publications, any new editions, or could we expect a new set of your beautiful work of art?
Things are pretty quiet right now as far as any new publications or me involved in. There are a couple of things I guess I'm not at liberty to really talk about, but that we have talked about it with my editor at HarperCollins as projects for me. And because I've been so terribly busy with just regular commitments to commissions and things, we haven't gotten that off the ground. And a couple of other things have been suggested and didn't work out either, at least now. So again, it leaves me free to pursue the commissions that I keep getting coming in, and I'm pretty fully employed with that. So for the time being, the short answer is I have 5 Tolkien-themed commissions, and I'm about to start on the first of those after I get back from a trip to Germany. I'm heading there on Thursday just for the weekend, and it's a group of Middle-earth role-playing card fans from Iron Crown stuff, and they've invited me to join them for a gathering, and that's
exciting.
That should be a lot of fun, and I'm going to do some music as well. So,
lovely.
Found a guitar for me, yeah.
Middle Earth role playing we have also on our shelf here. So it was, actually we played only one scenario in our whole life.
Yes, because we play more the card games. Live card game of Lord of the Rings. Because you worked on one card game, right?
Yes.
But not the live card game, but the collectible one, right?
Right. Yes. Fairly quite a number of scenes. I did about 50 different cards for MECCG series.
Okay.
So do you play a lot by yourself?
No, they sit in the drawer. But it was nice to be involved with it, certainly, and I love that there are all these dimensions to experiencing Tolkien these days. I mean, he will not be going away anytime soon.
Yes,
and I'm also a
absolutely.
fan, by the way, of Rings of Power, but I'm apparently an oddball.
I watched that.
There's a lot to enjoy in that.
Beautiful visuals, certainly. And
absolutely,
the storyline is, let's see what they're going to do with this 5 seasons or 4 seasons or whatever it is now.
Even more, I think, yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. But I love the fact that we have a new vision of Middle-earth in a video series like that. That's not necessarily controlled by the kind of Peter Jackson kind of aesthetic, and that they do actually, of course, honor that with a lot of continuity in terms of the look of characters and say Khazad-dûm and Moria and the dwarves, and so I think it's. Considering it's based on the appendices and it's not a linear narrative, and that the fact that they had to kind of write that, well, I think that's actually an advantage because it gives us Tolkien without it being compared to exactly how it was written in the storyline of whatever story. And I know that that's a controversial, disputed question, and fans are super, super loyal and particular about it all. But I say, let it go a bit. Let's see what they can come up with. I don't necessarily go along with the diversity that they're kind of really intensely showing us in that. It will look dated soon enough, but at the same time, I like the way they've developed the characters anyway. I think they're all really interesting. Yes.
Yeah, and it's, as you said, it's good to have those very diverse and rich visions of Middle-earth, not just the Peter Jacksonian one, but just different.
I think the scene with Celebrimbor and Sauron was one of the most powerful drama.
That was amazing. That was my favorite part.
Was written, of course, just assuming that something like this would have happened, and is plausible, and that to me is exciting, because it's still Tolkien, but this is dealing with the depth of the situation, the power games that are going on here. And wow, Celebrimbor doesn't get a lot of attention in the books, and yet he is a pivotal character.
Yeah.
And they had to explain how on earth he was ever, conned into doing what he did.
Absolutely, yeah. Fascinating character.
Yeah, both actors there did a great job. I was telling to Matthew that if I ever met Charlie Vickers in person, I would never trust him.
Yeah, true. That's a great actor.
You'll be wearing a black. You can trust me?
No way. Yes.
Never trust to someone who's playing Sauron.
Exactly.
That's the rule.
All right. Of course, in the notes of the episode, we will put all the links to the places you can find Ted online. So Ted, thank you very much for being on our podcast. It was a great pleasure to talk to you. And it was once again a real honor.
Yeah, thank you. It was an honor, and it was great to meet you.
My great pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And this has been a lot of fun. And I wish you guys well. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's been an honor.
That is the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for your time at the Green Dragon Inn. And remember, we are waiting for your comments and questions. And don't forget to click subscribe and like buttons on our channels.
Notes and other materials used in this episode can be found in the description of the episode on our website. There you can also find a Tolkien's collection, which means a full, very rich library of our books and other media we use to create the podcast.
And in the next episode, we are coming back to the 6th chapter of The Lord of the Rings, The Old Forest. So see you in the Green Dragon Inn next week. As Gandalf said, may the wind under your wings bear you where the sun sails and the moon walks.